Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? We are going to resume our session on British literature, and today is going to be a very special session on who Samuel Johnson. And you get at least 5 questions in your exam. And remember that some of them are direct question and some of them are indirect question. So very important that you should pay attention to this session, and it's going to be awesome session, and I'm sure after this session you will be able to grab all those 5 marks easily. So sit back, relax, and previously discussed a lot of thing, right? And we kind of stopped for like 3 4 days because of those holidays, and now we are again resuming, and it's gonna continue this session this week. And of course this time we are also going to take a session on Sundays, and it will be on paper one as well. And one of the important thing that I would like to announce is that what we are going to start our session from today on whatever that criticism, we're gonna start along with theory, and then we will have culture studies. Most of you are kind of confused with all these three section, and which eventually is divided unit wise, so you can cover 1 2 and 3 units together, right? So that's how we're gonna cover, and we are already covering our drama, poetry, right, and fiction and non-fiction, fiction, which is like prose, right? That we are already covering. So how many units? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So total like 7 units we are covering all together. And of course the other 3 are, one is from Indian, and another is language, and one is a research. So kind of completed all. So these 3 thing can be completed in 3 to 4 session. So don't worry about it, we will complete that as well. So for first, what we are going to cover all these 7 units which are very important in your exam, right? And these are all we are going all together in the same manner what we are doing right now. So let's get started, and let's not waste more time, because as you know, Samuel Johnson is a kind of guy that is important in your exam, right? And you are going to definitely see a lot of questions on him and also from him. So it's very important that we should start immediately, and I'm damn sure you're gonna enjoy the session. As you know, when we start a session, what we do, we basically just talk about what we have studied. So we have studied our Greco-Roman, we studied Old English, we studied Middle English, and we also discussed Chaucer, we discussed Tudor, right? We discussed Elizabethan, we discussed Jacobean, remember? And we also discussed Caroline, we discussed Restoration, we discussed what then Augustine, and in Augustine this is also one of the part because it spans both kind of together. So now we are talking about transition, and after that we'll straight move to romantic, then we'll move to our Victorian and end of Victorian and modern. So we will finish very soon, and remember whatever we have discussed all are to the point, and whatever the question they have asked in the past, we discussed a lot of question to. These are the things that will actually give you the mark, right? So if you just go around somewhere else, watch all the lessons, end up they don't tell you what kind of questions it will come, right? Especially in the free session that you get all over that YouTube channels, right? But here what we are doing, our focus is to sell our notes, because that is most important thing. Because in YouTube you can get a lot of videos, right, for free and all, but notes are very important, and notes with PYQ and with analysis is equally, it adds extra layer for you to clear the exam. So let me tell you, these notes are fully based on PYQ, and I haven't seen any questions from outside all these notes. So very important, you should get the notes, you should get printed material, you should get ebooks if you want to access immediately and forever, right? So everything is there, and along with that, what we promote, our PYQ, and also mock test, and all these period wise, uh, these MCQs, right? So these are very important in exam perspective. Lectures, what happens is that you get bored and sometime you just lost track and all, but when you have the notes or you have the printed notes, it's very easy, just sit down and relax and read all of it. And definitely, because of the comment, because of these highlights and bold in between the sentences, that actually adds kind of importance for your notes. And of course, the our PYQ, very special thing, an analyzed one, because if you read PYQ, you will just question, you will learn, you will just see the question, and also you'll just find the answer key and then complete, your job is done. But it's not done, because when you don't analyze any question, then you are not learning anything. So analyzing is the most important part in preparing any kind of exam. So it's very important that you should focus on PYQ mostly. Just don't wander around and collect all kind of stupid notes, and also waste your time on some long lectures, that you can do it later, right? But first important thing is, yes, you should have notes. So it's all about all these things. Now we are done with whatever I wanted to tell you. It's done. Right now we're going to focus on our Samuel Johnson. So historical background, simple. It's same like Augustine, right? It is till 88, but we'll just add 12 more years here, right? So 1740 to 1800 we're gonna talk about historical background. Why we actually talk about historical background? To build our chronology order and special dates. So based on that, we can just kind of find the important work, like how many years are behind or above or in together. So all these things, for that base we usually discuss the historical background to remember the chronological order. Again, like previously, again, Tory, it start from kind of Dryden times, that Tory and Whig was there, right? And then in our Augustine, we had a lot of fight between Whigs and Tories, and who suffered? Our addition and of course our Steele. So they have started different kind of magazine depending on them mostly. So some of them are based on Whigs, some of them are based on Tories, right? So political influence was kind of, you can see in all kinds of work. So it's very important that you should pay attention here, this historical background. So let me tell you what else other thing happened. The French Revolution happened. Remember that French Revolution, what inspired our romantic period in English. So romantic here in French Revolution coming a little bit earlier, right? Earlier, I mean like 10 to 15 years earlier than the in so that's what is the historical background here. Now let me tell you the age of transition. You can also call the age of prose, or you can also call the age of reason as well. So what are other things you should know to build up your mood for the grand finale, right? Like to learn about Samuel Johnson. So you should have a little bit particular idea about the historical background. Of course, we talked about. Now we're going to talk about what kind of mood was there, what kind of themes they were taking, what kind of their thinking evolved. So all these things we can. The age of the double tendency, then the classicism started, and after that we have romanticism begin, from where Thompson's season, that we'll talk about in our next session. Very important. Usually they don't ask questions from Thompson, but he's very important figure in our English literature, that anyway we'll talk about. Then the new romanticism, What romanticism returned to the nature started with who? Our Wordsworth, man's possession and sympathy for the poor, like Burns. If you read, the matrical form of Burns, and when you read Burns, it's really, kind of gives you symphony in your mind. I mean, the kind of music happens when you read his poems. Anyway, we'll read a couple of his poems when we talk about Burns, right? So revolt against conventional technique also happened. Again, there was some heroic couplet there, but mostly it was where in our Augustan age we had Dryden, we had our Alexander Pope, and couple of more, right? The new learning started, so revival of romanticism, ballad research based on that they made a lot, like we have Percy, Relique, and the new philosophy started, like skepticism, inquiry. Actually, it started long ago. Our talking about, right, empiricism, right, and all kind of euphemism were there, these terms, right? Remember, so all these things are very important in that period also, because they begin, started to ask questions, started to ask reasons, right? Then little bit birth of new realism, rise of the novel, right? Realism means you have a lot of people in Victorian, right? Starting with George Eliot is there, and many more are there who basically belong to the new realism. So that also kind of pushes a little bit to all traditional kind of thing that we talked about in Daniel Defoe and all these things, right? Daniel Defoe, Jonathan Swift, mostly Jonathan Swift was satiric, Daniel Defoe kind of fictional a little bit, and here what happens, little bit realism. They put little bit kind of originality in the novel. So kind of biographical, or they based on their life, all the emotional stuff they put. So that's all happened there. Now let me tell you. Now, as you know, in Augustine period there was a lot of influence of political writing, but here declined happened. People, all the poets started talking about humanism, realism, and all these stuff, and they also started expressing their emotions. So political writing obviously would kind of decline, and that eventually happened in this period as well, right? So let me tell you about this Samuel Johnson, that what you have been waiting for. You have been waiting for, you know 5 questions, right? And that we'll discuss. Anyway, we have 30 plus questions on Samuel Johnson in 5 to 6 or even 7 years if we stretch one more year. So 5, 6, 7 means like 7 years you have. They have asked 30 question, and that's a large amount of question on any particular critic or writer or playwright or poet, whoever, right? Even more than Shakespeare. So they Samuel Johnson, that's why we have dedicated one complete session on Samuel Johnson. Very important. Anyway, whoever is there online, can you please say hi in the chat box? So I'll continue and then we'll begin. Right, on Samuel Johnson, because let's talk about a little bit about you guys, who else are there in the uh, YouTube live. Anyway, I can just see a couple of people, but whoever is there, just say hi, right? Then we'll begin. Anyway, I hope you have your coffee with you. Mine is here, and we'll begin. Okay, I'm starting to get comments, but anyway, we'll continue. I can talk to you later. So Samuel Johnson, one of the important thing that you have to remember, his life spans 1709 to 84. Right? Very important that you should know. His life, not much of the things that you have to remember there. You should know that he was the son of Tory bookseller, born in Lichfield, and he still have that Tory views, because of course his father was a Tory, so strong influence can be seen in his writing as well. So suffered from skin disease, and of course he had his sight and hearing problem. You see, there was a photo where he was looking at this like book. Remember that portrait? Very important one. So that actually shows this particular point as well, right? And he was educated privately and later attended what? Oxford, right? And endured poverty. He had kind of this situation in his when he was a student, and failed at his school teaching, married to a woman 80 years older, and moved to London in 1737. That changed his life as well. And what change was there, that you can see in all the, especially what, that dictionary that gave him little money to move on, right? Everybody needs, right? You're also, your break would be what, qualifying net or JRF and get into the college, and the life will be kind of what you have dreamt for, right? Anyway, experience miseries of Grub Street life. Macaulay, what described Johnson's hardship vividly, and Johnson hated recalling his early life struggle. So he was not the kind of guy that he was, telling about his struggle of life. No, people used to tell a lot of their sad stories that you see in your other YouTube channels. Anyway, became noted poet with London in London. Very important poem. You know who other wrote London? And if you know, just you can write in the chat box. But anyway, I will reveal, because I don't want to spill the beans for you guys, because something that should spark your mind, and that London poem is similarly, kind of like that. So London. Is it Blake, or is it Milton, or both, or any other people? Write in the chat box if you know. Anyway, I'll tell you when we reach to the, uh, when we talk about the poem. Anyway, let's move. His dictionary, very famous, boosted his fame and also the wealth. Remember the date, 55. Emerged as literary leader in London, of course. Yes, and he's still kind of okay. The Vasu said Blake, and what about Wordsworth? Did he write about it? That also you should tell. Wordsworth wrote also London. Anyway, let's move. Emerged as literary leader in London, gained state pension in 1762, spent final years, of course, socializing and conversing. That's why we have what? Johnson's Club. Remember, very important, and that was the recent question they asked about. Not about your Kit Kat Club or Skibboleth clubs or other clubs. They talked about Johnson's Club recently. So that is very important that you should know. Anyway, let's move on forward. Let's move forward, and of course, he has a little bit of physical auditory, means what, he could not see. His physical is not good. His skin is kind of pale and all. Anyway, the club, very important. That question they have asked previously, I think very recent question it is. Remember the date, 1764, and when he died, 84. Remember that, 20 years later. And founded by the artist Joshua Reynolds. Very important, because he founded the art club also. Joshua Reynolds, very important figure in his whose life, Johnson's literary career. Anyway, the 9 original members. So the question was, who one of them were not in this, Samuel Johnson club, or who were there in the club. So remember, Joshua because he founded, Samuel Johnson because of the name, Edmund Burke, Christopher Note, Togham Buclark, Bennett Langton, Oliver Goldsmith, Anthony Chamer, and John Hawkins. You can easily remember these three guys, right? Joshua, Samuel Johnson, Edmund Burke, and Oliver Goldsmith. Right. So these four, even if you remember, you will be able to solve the questions whatever they throw at you about the club or literary club or Johnson's club. Very important, these are the same name, right? Addressed differently. Code is there to remember Samuel Johnson's completely, right? And how we do it? We talk about first walk, then we talked about last walk, then we talk about second last, then we talk about second, and whatever comes in the middle. So you know what happened? If you know these, you will be able to answer any kind of questions, especially if talks about the chronology order of the work or the name of the work. Through that, in the middle is for your being in the safer side, so that's why we put everything in the middle, right? So we talk about first, we talk about second, we talked about last and second last, and in the middle we just kind of remember through the code, right? So first work, you should know the London, right? And also Messiah. So you can just put it. If you remember London, it's very good. You can just put Messiah also. Second work, remember Life of Mr. Richard Savage, 1744. The last work. These are the middle period. Middle period we actually talk about later. The last work, Lives of the Poet. Remember 81 and he died on 84. So only 3 years later he died. So that you have to know. The last, the second last, you can put the plays of William Shakespeare and a dictionary of English language, right? So that is you can remember second, last, and last. So your kind of important, one question is done and dusted. That's what you're going to get in your exam. And when you know first, second, the last, and second last, and the middle, we have a lot of code. So in the middle, you can make the savage wishes, Irene. So this is the code in the middle. Savage, Richard, right? Remember that. And then wishes, vanity of human wishes, irony, his only play. Very important that you have to remember. And rambler and idler together, it just sound like that, so it's easy to remember. Why we are paying attention in his work? Because in that way you can remember all of his work and also the chronology order, which is important, and that's what you are getting in your exam. A Dictionary of English Language, 1755. The History of Raslas, Prince Abyssine. So you can also remember this, right? Remember first walk this, second last this, and in the middle we can put what his dictionary and all the savage wishes, irony, the rambler and the idler. Done. So all the work you can remember now. And remember to get this note, very important, you can of course we have also kind of added what every notes different thing. If you want notes on Greco, you can get, or all these chapters, whatever. If you want on Samuel Johnson's and the age of transition, that you can also get. So whatever you want, I one or right. So let me tell you about his essays. Also very important. You have to remember the Rambler, Idler, and the pernicious effect of recovery, because they have asked question. Very recent, I think the previously they have asked that cancelled exam, I guess. One more thing I wanted to tell you, because I need a question paper of that, cancelled, not cancelled exam, the rescheduled exam. If you have that question paper, whoever have, just WhatsApp me or just text me in my WhatsApp or Telegram anywhere and send the paper. So what I'll do, I'll just make an analysis of the question paper, and then you can enjoy and ask and discuss or debate whatever you want to do with each other. Anyway, so if you have the question paper, feel free to share to me, it'll help, right? About Rambler, Idler, very important. The literary magazine, a little bit more. But what you have to remember, the pernicious effect of reverie. They have asked question based on that. That's why we have put kind of. You would not, kind of guessed it that this work belongs to Samuel Johnson, because it is, and you can your Wikipedia also. So important that remember. Anyway, poetry drama, we talked about it. London Messiah opening, and then what? Vanity of human wishes and irony. We have no savage wishes, irony. So that you have to remember in order. Remember the date 1738 of London. Here that you have to kind of know. A Voyage to Abyssinia by Jerome Lobo. It was translated in French. Not kind of important, but you should know that he has translated a couple of works as well. So, Life of Mr. What Richard Savage, Life of Brown, Preface to William Shakespeare, the plays of William Shakespeare, and the lives of question. So you get mostly question from that, right? That will discuss what one by one. We have he has also crafted that dictionary of English language. Remember the date. Usually you get the date 1755. A dictionary of the English language 1755. The history of Rassalis 59 after this, and then we have the lives of the we have the plays of William Shakespeare, and at the end the lives of poem. Remember, first walk London, last walk lives, second walk Messiah, here second last walk what? Shakespeare, here dictionary, in the middle we have the code, what? Savage wishes, irony, right? Then we have what? Rambler, idler, right? All of this kind of done. So that's what you have to remember in order. See how easy it is to remember Samuel Johnson's all of his work in chronology order and also the date. Anyway, let me tell you about his poetry. Very important, as I told you about the London. Who else has written? Vasu said, "What are you telling, you know, thinking or whatever is in your mind? You can write in the chat box." Anyway, we'll discuss the Vanity of Human Wishes. Another poem, very important, which date 1749, inspired by juvenile 10th satire. Human Wishes examines human endeavors, written in heroic couplet. Who else in heroic couplet can quickly? Is it Milton or Dryden or Pope or Chaucer? Can you write in the chat box quickly? And if both have they have written, you can write in the chat box. Anyway, let's continue. And contains lines of solemn grandeur. What you have to remember in Human Wishes, that it is written by juvenile 10th satire. That's the question you get. And of course the date you get, and who is written, that is also you get. So that's what you get in your in the juvenile satire. In London, what else you get is somber poem. Not, it is not important like Blake's London, because in Blake's it's very important. The line in Blake in London that we'll talk about anyway later. So London 1738, text you should not, I mean, there is not, they didn't ask the text of London, but you should know the date and all, right? And the Vanity of Human Wishes, juvenile 10th satire, and then you're done. Also you can remember heroic couplet like London. Okay, let me tell you about London. So in London, as I told, in heroic couplet, remember that 263 lines. Then we have Johnson followed the Augustan trend like Pope and Dryden, published anonymously, so it was not with his name but anonymous. Johnson and Garrick lived together. Remember this actor, Robert Garrick, that we'll talk about. Richard Norris, with Richard Norris in 13. So that's all in London that you have to remember. And what else you remember that I told you, right? William Wordsworth also wrote London, and William Blake also wrote London, and novel is also written by London. So we have four guy who talked about London, who has written about London. So in London, critique oppression and industrialization. All the lines are important in London. Here in Wordsworth, every single lines are important in Wordsworth, London as well. Anyway, we'll talk about it. Uh, Remember, it's important because it opens with Milton. Thou shouldst be living at this hour. Very important one because they have asked question on that. Anyway, we'll talk about this poem, Wordsworth. Okay, so that's all there in his poem London. Now we'll talk about the vanity of human wishes. As I told you, what you have to remember, the 10th satire of Juvenal imitated. You get questions on that, and imitates Juvenal satire number 10 also. If they go a little bit deeper, they might ask the number as well. Right. So focus on what human futility and greatness, emphasize Christian value. Again, it's all about Christian values. So can you tell me, is there any element of Christianity in Beowulf, in Milton's Paradise Lost, or Paradise Regained? Right. So can you tell me in the chat box quickly if you know the answer? Otherwise, we'll move quickly to our next point. Of course, it was not financially successful. Walter Scott and T.S. Eliot called the greatest poem The Vanity of Human Wishes. Right. And London focused on politics, vanity on philosophical ideas, and changed publisher from Edward Cape to Robert Dodsley. Robert Dodsley, very important because in his literary career, so that you can add this into your brain. Anyway, life of Mr. Richard Savage, important. You know the code, right? Savage wishes irony. Wishes poem, Savage is the work, and this is chronology order. So anyway, full title: An Account of the Life of Mr. Savage, Son of All Rivers. Full title you have to know. And Johnson's biography, it was the first in 1744. The later biography you can see in the Lives of the Poet and Shakespeare's plays, right? It was also later included in the Lives of Poets itself in 1779 or 81 also. And it shows what marked the Johnson's rise of biographer. Now it's important we talk about irony. Remember, Irene is a date 1726 to 49, so kind of published here. Irene to London, brought manuscript in 1737 but staged in 1749. Irony ran 9 nights but what? Unsuccessful. So the play marked Johnson's only attempt at drama. So you can just remember one drama that he has written and which was unsuccessful. Right? Prose. That's what we are going to focus here. So Johnson's prose is considered his best writing. That's why we call him a critic, and that's why he's one of the first well-known kind of critic in English language. The late, the before that, like Philip Sidney's work is there and all, but he has kind of has written a lot of stuff. So that's why this guy is very important, and that's why you get 5 questions every time on Johnson's. Some of them directly and some of them indirectly, as I always say. So Johnson's fabricated speeches for legislators' benefits, produce hack work, Johnson's dictionary, 55 date, and wrote Rambler, Idler. We already two before when we were talking about what periodicals, we talked about Rambler and Idler as well. This time also we're going to talk about later, just in brief. Anyway, uh, His style is also kind of Johnsonese style. Not important for you to remember that they're not going to ask from that. Russellese is important because they ask question on chronology order. I've told you the chronology: first, last, second, second last, and in the middle, whatever the code we have. Right. And again, characters in Russellas are basic and underdeveloped, and not much of the things that you can remember. And this was also kind of included in the lives of the poet. Anyway, dictionary, very important that we have to know everything about dictionary. They can ask anything from that is, but what they usually ask the date 1755. Remember that it's the first English dictionary and it ran over 100 years, I think. And dissatisfaction with existing dictionary, and Johnson was paid how much? 1500 guineas or 1575 euro or pound, I think it's pound, for the dictionary. He took 7 years to complete it, but he had kind of got 3 years to finish it, but he took how 7 years. Worked single handed, nobody was there to help him with the entry, but just for small entries like clerical assistance there were people, but not about whatever that he has entered there. So produced several revised edition during his lifetime. Remember, as I told you now, over 100 years. In fact, it also surpasses more to 173 years of dictionary. That's a lot actually, like whole century, right? Walter called it what? Scholarly achievement. The dictionary included language, history, and grammar. And a one volume version, 1756, was popular in the 20th century. Remember, you have to remember this date, other you don't get confused. Okay. And it remained the standard dictionary until Webster, 1828. That we'll talk about when we talk about dictionaries, what kind of new words they have entered, and from India, from Hindi or other languages in India. So that we'll anyway talk about when we talk about dictionaries. Okay. So Johnson dictionary was highly influential and enduring. So as I told you, what you have to remember the date, and what you have to remember how much money he was paid for it. The Rambler, Idler, remember the date, 18th century. And Tuesday, Saturday, Tatler's date. I mean, how many times in a week they used to publish? That was TTS, our code, right? Rambler, total what? 208 articles. Idler, you have to just remember the name that these are by Samuel Johnson's in periodicals, and also the chronology order, starting with Tatler, right? Tatler, Spectator, Guardian, the Rambler, Idler, all these magazine. Anyway, we talked about before. We'll also talk about when we add new dictionary. I mean new periodicals. Then we'll talk about more. Idler, the same universal chronology weekly ones, and Johnson wrote some essays quickly like casual letters. Again, you have to remember the date. The history of Restless, you should know the work that it was written by Samuel Johnson, and this is very important, the choice of life. They have asked question based on that. So we have mentioned in the bold. The book was first published in April 1759, England. Preface to Shakespeare, very important, and you won't believe it how deep question they are asking on preface to Shakespeare, and also what they ask about his what lives of the poet. Very deep text they are asking nowadays on Johnson. But one question you can just expect that you're going to get, right? So, anyway, let me tell you about what preface to Shakespeare. Remember, this has four components. and four components. I mean, just give me a minute. The coffee is stone cold, Steve Austin, right? Anyway, preface to Shakespeare describes. Remember, four components are there. So when we talk about preface to Shakespeare, and if you start reading it, it'll take a whole month or maybe a week for you. If you're a fast reader, you can complete it. I mean, not the preface but whole Shakespeare thing, whatever the plays that he has translated, or the work that he has done, he has edited all of this, right? So that will take a lot of time. But when we talk about a large work, or whenever we talk about any essays, very important essay in our exam perspective, we break it down so we can remember all of this in parts, right? So in preface to Shakespeare, what happened, he talks about his greatness. So suppose if you are just taking someone like legends, and any legends, what do you talk about? Suppose you are meeting to me and you have a lot to admire Blake. First she will talk about his greatness, what kind of he's important. I mean, what kind of greatness he possesses, how well he is, how legend he is, right? She will talk to me about it. But the next thing, what some fault also, she'll talk about it. So remember the greatness and the weakness. So both in two part. First, then the relationship between his work like Shakespeare plays and contemporary poetry and drama. Then a history of Shakespearean criticism. There his greatness, then his weakness, then what his works, all the plays, and then criticism. So where we get a lot of question on his criticism, right? That we'll talk about anyway. So that you have to remember, our preface to Shakespeare divided into four parts. Remember, weak is first is greatness, then weakness, then his plays, then what, his criticism, right? So we have divided our whole preface. Now we'll just move. Total we have 72 pages, and the pages are very complicated. You have to pay like a lot of attention to read only one sentence, right? So antiquity, like every other quality, what he said, starting with this, and that question you got in your exam from this quote. Antiquity, like every other quality that attracts the notion of mankind, has undoubtedly what reads that reverence it, not but from. So that you have to remember. So I have all the important quotes what they have asked previously, right, from this preface to Shakespeare. Anyway, another question they asked about what mankinds have long possessed, they have often examined, compared, and if they persist the value, the possession, it is because frequent comparison have confirmed opinion in its favor. They have asked question in this quote as well. So now when these two important, in the beginning of the essay, these two are very important. As I told you, the greatness, he's talking about the greatness. So when they talk about, when they ask question about, in any part they might ask in your exam. So these sentences can actually tell you actually which part it is belong, which kind of sentence it will it be in the beginning or in the end or in the, also very important, have to read what what kind of text he has written and what kind of style is there, what kind of criticism is there, right? So let's move on. So first, as I told you, the greatness. What else he talked about it? Shakespeare was a poet of nature. Greatness. His plays are neither tragedy nor comedies. Right? It could be weakness or greatness also, or as well. Poetry, according to him, poetry should instruct and delight. Shakespeare's genius is in comedy greatness. People naturally like justice. Johnson was critical of Shakespeare's poetic justice, so criticism, right? Shakespeare's drama plots are loosely formed, his weakness and criticism. Shakespeare is guilty of violating the chronology of time and place. Example, Hector in Troilus and Cressida. So this question they have asked in the exam. Very important one that you should pay attention and also remember, because that's kind of question you're getting in Johnson. One question on chronology, but the rest will be like this. So, unnecessary repetition of language. He's again criticizing him. Language, you know, of course, the same thing is there. He talks about his language and violation. So, in time, he talked about the time, the violation of time where in Troilus and Cressida, right? And also violation of all unity. So not only time, but he also not only time and place, but also he talks about the violation of all unity. Very important that they have asked question: Shakespeare as Homer and Ben Jonson as who? Virgil. Who said it? Can you tell me? Is it Johnson or Dryden? Quickly tell me in the chat box. Then I'll answer anyway later. So, important paragraphs. So, first begins with Johnson begins with that praises are without reason lavished on the dead, and that the honors due only to excellence are paid to antiquity. Okay. The rest you can read it when you get the notes. Right. Again, he's talking about now Shakespeare, right? What mankind have long possessed, they have often examined and compared, right? And if they persist value the possession, it is because frequent comparison have confirmed or you know in its favor. That we already discussed. Remember its whole paragraph. The next important line that you can remember: the Pythagorean scale of numbers was at once discovered to be perfect. Again, what has been longest known has been most considered, and what is most best understood. Remember these lines. Johnson's then introduces our Shakespeare and says what? Very important line, and this question on in your exam. Nothing can please many and please long, but just representation of general nature. Particularly, manners can be known to few, and therefore few only can judge how nearly they are copied. Very important, right? They have asked question on that, and you always get one question from this particular line. Shakespeare is above all writers, at least above all modern writers, the poet of nature. You get question who called of nature, the poet of nature, right? And the poet that holds up to his readers a faithful mirror of manners and life, right? Now, another phrase that you can remember: it was observed again about Shakespeare. It was observed of the ancient schools of declamation that the more diligently they were frequented, the more was the student disqualified for the world, because he found nothing there. Remember, he found nothing there which he should ever meet in any other place. Again, some of the more paraphrase, very important paraphrase are also there that you can read. There was one question on this also. I will not say with Pope that every speech may be assigned to the proper speaker, because many speeches there are which have nothing characteristic, right? Characteristical. But perhaps those some may be equally adapted to every person. It will be difficult to find any that can be properly translated from the present possessor of another Clement. So here he is mentioning Pope. So that kind of question you might get. Shakespeare has asked a lot of question on that. There was a question who said that Shakespeare has no heroes. There was option T.S. Eliot, there was option Samuel Johnson, then Dryden, and Philip Sidney, which is basically not important, right? In this criticism, Shakespeare's criticism, because he was way before uh, Shakespeare. Then Shakespeare has no heroes. Remember, Shakespeare has no heroes. His scenes are occupied only by men who act and speak as the reader, where as the reader thinks that he should himself have spoken, acted on the same occasion. Even where the agency is supernatural, the dialogue is level with the life. So what basically is, remember, that's where you're getting question. Shakespeare has no heroes. Okay, this therefore is the praise of Shakespeare, that his drama is the mirror of life. Remember, they have asked the question on that. That he who has amazed his imagination in following the phantoms which other writers raise up before him may here be cured of his delirious ecstasies by reading human sentiments in human language. So this paragraph very important. They have asked question. Then, very important one coming in your way. The poet of whose work I have undertaken the revision may now begin to assume the dignity of an ancient and claim the privilege of established fame and perspective veneration. He has long outlived life, the term commonly fixed as the. I feel like this is from the lives of the poet. And I don't know why it end up here. But anyway, we'll see in the lives of the poet. So now we are talking about the lives. I hope all the question they have asked from these lines and text, right? So if you know this, then your preface to Shakespeare is done. You will easily answer the question, any question they throw at you. So lives of the English poets, very important. What is important? The date 1781, starting from 79, right? 1779 to 81. Remember the date, very important. And as you know, it's the last work. After 4 years, he died. Plus 4 years, what? 3 years, he died. 84. Remember the date. And this volume contains what? Short biographies. Some of them are in one page or one paragraph, and some of them can be a whole one page to whole book. Right? So that kind of structure is there in his lives of poet. Let me, break it down for you. Remember, there are 52 poets. Very important number. Remember, 18th century. Not like 17th or 16th or 19th, right? 18th century. And divided his biography in three. And how can we break it down? A narrative of the poet's life. First, he talks about the life, a presentation of his characters summarized in traits, a critical, then at the end, the critical assessment of their poems. Right? So that's how he actually what kind of divided his whole biography. So the names were arranged by the birth, like usually we in even in your exam they ask chronologically, right? Always that one. But here they're asking the not asking that Samuel Johnson is arranged by the death. So who died first will come here, died later, like that it will come. Not arranged by birth. Remember that there was this question, I mean this option in one of the option, like which one of them are true or not true, right? So if it was not true, then it is not arranged by the date of birth, right? So that is very important that you should remember. Very important one are Abraham Cowley that we'll talk about, John Milton, we have Dryden, Joseph Addison, Pope, William Collins, and we have William Sandstone. Very important, all of them. And here you usually get question from here, and what from Pope. Also Dryden, but not much of the thing, but you get from Pope. And why? I'll tell you. So as you know, three kind of: first his life, poet's life, then his character, and then his character and the poem, and of course his criticism and poem in the third one. Very important. That's how you can just break it down. Then let's move it and talk about the blank verse makes some approach. So very important. There was a question on that. Johnson actually dislike of John Milton and Thomas Gray. So he was not kind of a fan of Milton or Gray. So very important that you should know. What he said, why he didn't like them. The blank verse makes some approach to that which I call the lapidary style. They have asked question on that. Very recent question it is. So it's very important that you should kind of know lapidary style. So has neither the easiness, they have asked the question on that as well, neither has the easiness of prose nor the melody of numbers, and therefore tires by long. Got it? So this whole paragraph about John Milton and Thomas Gray. Very important that you should know. What? The blank verse makes some approach to that which I call the lapidary style, has neither the easiness of prose nor therefore by long. Tell me who tires you, when you read any literature or any particular. You can life, you can take any author and criticize, and that's how you can just build or even remember, right? So these have been cited as evidence that he was prejudiced against their poverty. However, this argument has been overstated. His opinions about a poet and his work differ from time to time. In the case of Collins, remember, Johnson disagreed with the poet's poetic manner. He puts his words out of the common order to think with some later candidate for fame that not to write prose is certainly right to poetry. So it was about poetic manner. He was particular proud of what? Life. Why? That metaphysical term, 17th century metaphysical term that he introduced, metaphysical poets, where in the life of Cowley, according to Johnson, Cowley may have been the last representative of metaphysical poets. Remember what he said about him. But wit, abstracted from its effect upon the hearer, may be more rigorously and philosophically considered as a kind of discordia concord. Remember, you always get question on that. Combination of dissimilar image. Can you tell me one more thing? Who said dissipate image, dissipate, dissimilar, and all these kind of things? Right? Can you write in the chat box if you know? Or discovery of occult resemblance in things apparently unlike. Of wit, thus defined, they have more than enough. The most heterogeneous what ideas are yoked by violence together. Nature and art are ransacked for illustration, comparison, and allusion. Their learning instruct and their subtly surprises, but the reader commonly thinks is improvement dearly bought. And though he sometime admires, is seldom pleased. Remember what you have to remember here in the life of Cowley. Remember the metaphysical term in the life of Cowley and this word discordia concourse. Remember Why I said about the Pope? Because they have asked this question. The life of Pope is the longest and the best. So he kind of liked him. So Pope's life and career were fresh. That's what he said. It was public enough to provide ample biographical material. Johnson found Pope's poetry highly congenial. Very important that you should remember this, right? Johnson agreed to write what Little Lives and Preface. When he started this, he had this idea, Little Lives and Prefaces in the beginning. Then it turned out to be the lives of the poet. He defended Pope as a poet. Remember, very important question all the time you get from it. It is sure, as you know, he liked the Pope, and Pope was criticized a lot for his physical appearance also and for his work as well. As you know, Thomas what Shadwell and all, right? So what he defended there, what Johnson said, it is surely what superfluous to answer the question that has been asked, what whether Pope was a poet. This was the thing that they have asked question. Otherwise than by asking in return, if Pope be not, where is poet? Very important line. You always get question on that. It was on Pope by Samuel Johnson. I hope you kind of got the idea, and that's kind of question you get in exam, not the whole lot of. I have watched a lot of videos on Samuel Johnson's and other educator as well. But what you can add, I mean, a lot of things about them, but not the important what they have asked in the exam, because that's what we need, right? We need to clear the exam, right? And that's what actually required for you guys. You don't have to go and watch and so many things. You should watch a quality videos. Doesn't matter if it is long or small, but quality videos only from your exams perspective. Anyway, later, because you're going to become a professor, then you'll do your deep reading. You can just create something, you can analyze something, you can write book, you can write papers, a lot of stuff later. But right now what you need is to get that PhD degree, right? To qualify net. And of course, if you get JRF, that's very good one. And of course, if you're reading from my notes or if you're preparing from here, you are definitely going to get JRF, and I'm 100% sure. And they are not very to finish in October as well. If not, we'll just push to November also, so that in that period we will cover every single stuff. Paper 1, of course, we are starting very soon, from maybe from Sunday, maybe before that. Anyway, I'll announce. We are starting today what culture, theory, and criticism, all from today itself. I'll share the kind of announcement in the group, and I'll pin it for you if you're in the group. If you're not, you can just click the link in the description box, join Telegram, join course, or buy notes. Very important. You should not waste a single time, right? A single minute, in fact. So act now. And of course, Johnson considered Dryden greater than Pope. So he kind of liked Dryden too, more than Pope. Dryden greater than Pope. Very important. He separated poets' life from their work. Who believed a good poet is necessarily a good man. Acknowledged contradiction between life and writing. Pity through biographical paths. And chastise failings, commend virtue. He favored who? Dryden to Pope. Very important. Skeptical of contemporary poets like Gray, Collins, and who? Milton. Also, you can add one more. Admired Gray's an elegy written in the country churchyard. This poem was obviously so good, so kind of supported. Used his method to assign different purpose to life and poetry. Some quoted phrase that you get question. Little lives and little preface to little addition to the English poets. He puts his words out of the common order, seeing to think. Can you tell me who he's talking about? With some later candidates for fame, that not to write prose, certainly to write poetry. It was Collins. It is surely what superfluous to answer the question that what Pope was a poet. Otherwise, where? Remember, if Pope be not a poet, where is poetry to be found? Johnson about Pope. A manifest and striking contrariety between the life of an author and his writings on poet's life and work. In such a manner as may tend to promotion of pity and other biographical paths. So guys, Samuel Johnson, what? Samuel Johnson, done and dusted. Done and dusted, guys. Completed. You are going to get question 5 question from the session that we talked right now. And I don't know if it is more than 1 hour now, but even if it is, you're going to get 5 questions, right? Very important. Get the notes as well to solve all the PYQs. Anyway, I'll solve a little bit, not all of it. If possible, we'll try to finish. But as I told you, 30 plus questions that you can go to in Google Classroom. You can join through the link that I have provided in the chat box quickly. Who among the following observed nothing can please many and please long, but just representation of general nature? Can you tell me quickly? Samuel Johnson. We just talked about. Nothing can. We also talked about the. Anyway, why choose the correct chronological sequence of the work? So if you know Johnson's work, we talked about no first work London, then Messiah. Remember last work Lives of the Poet. Then what? Preface to Shakespeare. Then what we have? Dictionary. So you know the dictionary 1755. You know the preface 65, and you know the 1781 Lives of the Poet. So what we are talking about here, and say Boswell is somewhere around 17. I'm not sure about by who Boswell. That anyway we'll talk about it. 89 somewhere or 91. Anyway, we'll confirm that. But you have to know, if you know all these, it'll be easy to answer, right? Obviously, it'll come later. This will come later. So D, C, this B, and these you can put. So easy, you can remember C, then the life of Johnson. A is there, Vicar of the Field, Johnson's Dictionary 5581, the life of Nelson, somewhere around that. Anyway, when we go to the explanation, we'll see. Johnson's Dictionary 55 right, Vicar of the Field 66, Lives of the Poet T1 right. Lives of Johnson, as I told you, 89 to 91. So these are important. 91 right. So the life of Nelson 1813 at the end. Done and dusted through your. Okay, which among the following is not a work by Johnson? You know the code and all. First, London Messiah. Remember all of his work in between quotes. Savage wishes idler. So Savage wishes irony, right? And Rambler idler. Everything. Journal to Stella is by who? We talked about Swift, right? So that is by Swift. Easy. All are by. This question they have. The Rambler Idler Journal to Stella by Swift on Easter Johnson, nicknamed as Stella. Okay, who among the who said the blank verse quoting an unnamed critic verse only to be the eye? Samuel Johnson. We have the remember lapidary style. Always you get question. These are all we have discussed, right? Arrange the following in chronological order. Again, 81 origin of this species, I think 1851 somewhere. So kind of 1 1 is coming, right? 1851, 1781, and advancement of learning, if you remember, somewhere around 1591, I guess. I don't know. Let me see. 16 not 1, 16 not 5. So 16 not 5 advancement. The Bacon came way before, and of course on heroes and worship, very last one. So we can just advancement of learning by Bacon. Obviously, Bacon came first from all the listed, authors' work. The Lives of the Poet, 81. Now on the heroes in it, Carlyle, Victorian, Origin of a Species, our 50, 59, not 51, 1859. Very important date that you have to remember. Always you get this, the origin of a species. Always somewhere they'll pop up in chronological order. 59, not 51. Okay. 18th century chronological order. Again, Rambler, Monthly, Magazine, Gentleman. We have the order here. Answer is the Critical Review. Remember, then the Rambler. Date is 1731. The Gentleman's 1740. Rambler, you know the date 52. The Critical Review 1756. So all of are listed here. Anyway, when you go and solve the question in Google Classroom, you will get all the explanation as well. And if you don't want that, you can just go to, buy notes, and that you will get also there. So the arrange the following political works in their chronological order of publication. Preface, of course, 1800. Defense of Rhymes, Samuel Daniel, very early, somewhere around 1600. And Life of Cowley, of course, 1781. And The Frontier of Criticism by who? Uh, Matthew Arnold, very later, or somebody else. Let me see who has written. Matthew Arnold, of course. 16, 1961. 1961. So all the dates, how we kind of make it or remember everything because of our general guess. You don't have to remember the specific date, but even if you remember their the life span, then you will easily answer. So as you know, all the same thing. Our Defense of Rhyme is first by Daniel, then we have Life of Cowley 81, then Preface to Lyrical 1800, and The Frontier 61. Right. Let me check when is the date for Samuel Defense of Rhyme. 1600. Okay, arrange the following in chronological order of their publication. We should not see the date. Anyway, onto this last, Life of Samuel Johnson, Leviathan, present. Tell me, Leviathan, very early again, somewhere around 1600. Right, somewhere around 1600, not complete. And past and present, Carlyle somewhere around 17 later, late, or maybe 1800 times. Unto this last, The Life of Johnson, we know 17, what was it, 91, right? Yes. So of course, Leviathan would be the first, and then we'll have, of course, The Life of Johnson because of this date, and 1718 somewhere at the end, 1800, we have past and present, and at the end unto this last. Right. As you know, it was by Ruskin, 1860. Easy to answer. Which two of the following are Samuel Johnson's statement about metaphysical point? What? They were singular in thought, they were careful of their diction, or the affected combination of dissimilar. Remember, we talked about dissimilar image. Easy to answer. And they were singular in their thought. Arrange the following periodicals in the chronological order in which they, the first Spectator, and the Critical Review would be a little bit, The critical review 1756. So you know the date. This is 1709. This is 1711. This is 52 and 56, right? Here is close, but even if you remember these, you will be able to answer the question anyway. Easy. Which two among the following condemned transporting 5,000, 5 lakh, no, 50,000 slaves into England in 17? So as we know, Pope and Johnson, both of them kind of opposed it. The above passage, considered to be the death knell of new classical criticism, is attributed to. We talked about no new classical criticism, the death knell, Samuel Johnson. Remember the quote in Rambler? Given below are two statements. Again, Johnson had an inclination toward definitely true. Uh, Dr. Johnson strongly believed in transcendentalist skepticism. Right, transcendentalist skepticism. This is not a kind of that we have discussed, but there will be. So, explanation. Philosophical belief in transcendental escape, which is philosophical position of emphasizing the limitation of human knowledge and the difficulty of knowing things with certainty. The statement is related to philosophical belief. So possibly they are kind of together correct. Dr. Johnson's dictionary, easy to answer. No need to go further. Find the chronological order of the given. The Leviathan date 1603. Pepys' diary, right? 16, remember 66 to it was somewhere 69. Bunyan's Pilgrims, somewhere around 1680, 80 somewhere. And Locke's Human Wishes, 16 before Bunyan, of course. So we have the first Leviathan, the date 16. Then we have this one, we know 1691. So that will also all are somewhere 16 answer. This is 1791. Remember that. Easy to answer. Bunyan's 78, Hobbes 51, of course 51 before that. Hobbes Leviathan 1651. So somewhere is the date confusion previously. Okay, 1689, very famous date 1689. Remember 80 time. Only 1 year later we remembered this code, and of course published, but 1660 to 70. 16. The Life of Mr. Savage is written by who? Of course, Samuel Johnson. Easy to answer. Arrange the correct chronological sequence of the publication of the following text. Again, chronology. Most of the question you can see all about chronology. Essay of dramatic poesy. Remember the first and last work of Dryden. Last work was there somewhere around 1669 to 80 something. Remember this. Even if you just kind of have get the idea where he belongs in the last work, you will be obviously this will be at the end a room of one's own. Culture and Anarchy, Maternal Wave before this. The Lives of the Poet, 1781. This is Victorian, which one? Culture and Anarchy, somewhere around 1850s. And Preface to Lyrical Ballad, 1800. So all these things, even with the slight idea, you can easily answer. Right, so our answer will be what? A should be the first. Essay dramatic poesy, 66. As I told you, 66. Then we have Lives of the Poet, 1681, 1781, sorry. And we have Lyrical Ballad, 1800. And we have Culture and Anarchy. Let me see the date. 1867. 1867. Culture and Anarchy, 1867. And we have Room of One's Own, somewhere around, I don't know, 1920s. You know, their T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf, their work belonged to 1919 to it goes to 1925. This basic dates, if you remember, somewhere it will be there, maybe 29 or something. Let me see which is the date. 29. So this is 1929. So easy to answer all of this. So our B would be at the end, and A would be in the beginning. These are eliminated, and then we have Lives of the Poet, D. So this is your answer. Easy to answer, right? If you know the date. Question number again 19. Arrange the following writers chronologically. Again, the same way you can do it. Boswell, of course, later. Then Samuel Johnson, Edmund Burke, because he wrote about Burke, remember? Edward Gibbon also, so somewhere around. Samuel Johnson first, then Edmund Burke because he wrote in his book, and then Edward Gibbon. Boswell because it was his biographer. Richard Brinsley Sheridan, at the end, dramatist. Easy to answer. Which of the following books were published in the year of 1791? We recently talked about 91. Remember this one, right? And what else is there? The Burke's. I think it is Rights of Man by Paine. Same date. Okay, done. Others, you know the date, right? Dictionary, you know. James Boswell dictionary, you know that. This one also we talked about it. So easy to answer, right? Question number 21 again. Arrange the chronological sequence in which the following works were published. Again, preface, you know the date. 67, 65, right? And we have Inquiry, Human Understanding. After 1 year, 1689. This is 17. Social Contract by our Rousseau. Treatise on Human Nature, again by him. Locke. And then Reflection on the Revolution in France by. So remember the date. Human Nature by David Hume. 1739. An essay inquiring concerning human understanding. David Hume's, again. Social Contract, Principle of Particle by Rousseau. Remember the date. 1762. The Plays of William Shakespeare, you know the date. 1765. Reflection of the Revolution of France. 1790 by Edmund Burke. Anyway, we'll talk about Burke and other when we talk about, of course, later we'll move to their prose part. Again, we talked about this. Who said it? Johnson, Life of Cowley. What implies is this thing, D and E, a combination of dissimilar image, of course, we talked about it, and E, a combination of contradictory ideas and concept. Few more. So finally, we are done. We completed 22 questions. The rest you'll get where in your Google Classroom. So guys, that was a kind of long session, and I guess you liked the session, and we have covered every single thing about Samuel Johnson's, and that can also be added because when we talk about uh, criticism, because we're starting from today, right? We will talk about from the beginning, like classical criticism, but first we'll talk about Indian classical criticism, then European classical criticism, then we'll talk about Renaissance criticism, and then we'll talk about our in Jacobean. There are not important one, Jacobean, Elizabethan, they come together. We'll talk about neoclassical criticism, and we also talk about classical criticism. So all these things we will complete. So anyway, we are about to talk about this today itself. I'll just share the announcement in the group and also pin in WhatsApp. So be there and we'll have really fun. So for now, thank you so much. We have completely covered, and in our next session, we'll talk about Daniel Defoe and other novelists also. Right, like we have Richardson and other Henry Fielding and all that we'll talk about. Anyway, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next session. Bye bye, and have a